Well, what are we going to do here today?
Well, these are the students. They're all just sort of gathering right now. But I take a minute. I'd like to introduce you to the principal of the upper school. This is Ms. Malka Popper. She's the administrator for the upper school and sort of is organizing all our quarantine activities.
Hi. Thank
Hi,
you so
how are
much
you?
for being with us today.
Are you being quarantined so that I don't get near you?
You know, it's probably better for both of us.
Okay, as long as it's
Thank you so much for being with us today.
my pleasure.
And we have over here, we have Miss Ariel Troy, who's another one of our alum.
Are you alum? I didn't know you were alum.
Hi.
All I see is a pretty young girl, not an alum.
So nice to meet you. Thank you so much.
You're very welcome. You're speaking to the microphone. Okay, we're all assembled. Where is this assemblage taking place?
Where are you guys?
Where are you? Where are you situated? Are you in America, in the United States? I get people calling me from Russia, from China, from all parts of the world, but you don't look to me like Russians. Where are you calling me from? Can you tell
Go
me?
ahead and identify. Go ahead and speak to him.
Okay. I'm coming from Washington, D.C. I live here. I go to school in St. Louis. I go to Washington University in St. Louis, but I was just in Belgrade, Serbia for the semester. I'm studying abroad. I was studying abroad there. I had to come home, but now I'm in Washington, D.C.
Good, welcome home.
Thank you so much.
Sorry you come home to Washington, which is closed down, but we'll open it up again.
Yeah, hopefully.
Good.
And we have Mrs. What are you now? You're not Farber anymore. Becca Bubas?
The U is actually a long U, like in music.
Music, Bubas. Ah, like Buble. Like Buble.
You're going to sing me a song?
I actually did sing for my students earlier today, so be careful what you wish for.
Oh, now you encourage me to insist.
I'm living in Los Angeles now, but I'm a graduate of Hebrew Academy, class of 05.
05.
Indeed.
That sounds like one of my grades.
Mr. Ferencz, I also want to introduce you to Shira Diener. She is the Director of Jewish Education with Facing History. So she's joining us from Boston. We're out around Boston.
Boy, this is an interesting gadget. It can move all around the world.
This is a huge honor. You are a huge, huge mentor to us, and we adore you, and we watch Watchers of the Sky all the time.
Really?
Oh yeah, it has meant so much to us.
I like that film myself.
Wonderful film. Wonderful film.
Amazing. Thank you.
Well, you should see the other one. It's Prosecuting Evil.
Okay, I don't know that one.
Prosecuting Evil. It's available on the website, or what is it called?
Excellent. It's on Amazon and Netflix right now. I think many of the kids watched it and Sue's watched it. So.
Oh, wonderful.
You can watch that one.
See, they just keep appearing, Mr. Ferencz. They just keep appearing below here.
It disappeared?
No, they keep growing. Our numbers keep growing.
Oh, I see. Okay, well, fill them up and then we can all go home.
I did want to say, I don't know if your son, I sent an email last night. I forwarded an email. We have a student who's an alum of Berman, whose grandfather worked with you. And I'm going to bring Max on. Max, can you unmute yourself? And maybe if your dad's around, maybe you and your dad can talk.
Here, one moment. I'll call him over. He's coming. Hello.
Right.
Matt Cronish here.
Who are you two gentlemen?
You want to tell him who you are?
Sure. My name is Matthew Cronish, and this is my son, Max Cronish.
Okay.
And Max's grandfather, Myron Cronish, is a gentleman who worked with you on your efforts to end war. And you've got some quotes from him in one of your books.
Right, good. Well, I'm glad to be honored by attending all these Cronishes in one shot.
Our pleasure and honor, sir.
My pleasure.
Okay, so I think we have a lot of folks here right now. So why don't we go ahead? I don't see, is Rabbi Kastan on here? You see him on here yet? I don't think so. Maybe wait a couple more minutes in that. So if you're in my class right now, can you wave at Mr. Ferencz so he can see who you are?
I'm waving at you.
Those are the students who are currently in my class. Now, if you're an alum of the Holocaust and Human Behavior class, why don't you go ahead and wave?
Yeah, I can see myself wave. I'm waving with both hands.
So you have quite a crew of admirers here, Mr. Ferencz.
Well, I'm very glad to know that. Make a list of them. I can save it in my will or something.
We'll accept that. That would be awesome.
Okay. You're
So
all lined up on the
here?
top.
All right. Anybody else coming in here? If you want to just say hello to Mr. Ferencz while we're waiting for people, you can unmute for a moment and say hi if you'd like.
Okay, there's a man peeking over your corner. I don't know who he is, but he's peeking at you. He ran away. He ran away.
Okay, Mr. Ferencz, is it set up for you so you can see everyone?
I can only see you, and I can see the four heads of the three people we said hello to.
Yeah. Okay. All right. There's a way that you can do it on the top right corner that makes it look like the Brady Bunch. It's a grid, and it makes it kind of lay out like the Brady Bunch.
Am I going to look like the Brady Bunch?
That's a much bigger Brady Bunch, like a 50-person Brady Bunch family.
All right.
Okay. Okay. So is Don there? Can he see if
Don, are you around somewhere? He's probably in another room hiding. Don, can you hear this? He's here?
No.
He left.
He'll be back soon.
He'll be back soon, I'm told.
Okay, fair enough. All right, so I have one more introduction to make, and then I will turn the floor over to you. I'd like to introduce our headmaster who just joined us. His name is Rabbi Dr. Kassan.
Hi.
Turn off our mics except for Dr. Kassan. Thank you. Go ahead.
Thank you so much for being with us today. I know that Ms. Johnson has been so eager to have you speak with our students in our community, so we are so honored to have you. Thank you for taking this time. It is a true honor.
My honor. My pleasure.
All right. Mr. Ferencz, the floor is yours. Anything you'd like to share with us, we would love to hear.
Well, I knew a dirty joke that somebody told me once.
I'm sure
suppose you have
students would probably roll with that.
I suppose you may want to know how to save the world or something else.
That would be fantastic.
Well, how many minutes do you want to give me for that?
What do you need?
Well, I'll give you 1 minute to save the current crisis, because that's the one which is really on everybody's mind at the moment. And all you can do and all I can do and all anybody can do is try to behave in a way which is not going to increase the number of people who will suffer from the virus. If we can do that, that's about all we can do. We have to have the right prescriptions and the right medical care and correct behavior, such as not gathering in large gatherings like this, to limit the number of people who acquire the disease. The next thing we have to do is to recognize how long does that disease last. Now, I haven't been able to ascertain that yet from many of the news reports, but assuming it lasts for a month or two, what then? I was gratified to see that the number of deaths compared to the people who acquired the disease ranges between 3 and 5%, depending on the country, which is relatively small, so that we can look forward to, even if you are infected with the virus, perhaps a month or two of bedridden attention, and after that, you got a 97% chance of recovery. So that's a pretty good ratio. It's nothing to get into a big panic about. I have personally lived through circumstances where cities disappeared. The bombing of some cities during the wartime. I was there, I saw it. Years later, I was pleased to return and find the cities had recovered. And this was killing more people than have been killed by this or any other virus. Millions of people killed by the stupidity of not being able to settle your disputes by peaceful means only. And that's a world in which we still live. There are nations that are still eager to go to war to settle their differences. We are the greatest, We are the strongest, and we're going to teach the rest of the world that they either do what we want them to do or we'll let them have it. That's a crazy policy, a crazy policy. And I don't care which political party you're for. I don't get involved in politics. I get involved in the positions taken by the people. If the positions are designed to create a more peaceful and happy world, I'm for them. If they're against it, or they think that we have superior powers to decide for ourselves whom we're going to kill when we want to kill them, that's not the world that I can support, or the party that I can support, or any person that I can support. So that's an overall view of my view. I think that we have come a long way, baby, since the days when I was a soldier in World War II. I just finished the Harvard Law School. I had specialized in criminal law, and I hadn't anticipated the type of criminals that Adolf Hitler and his group represented. I encountered that very soon, and I was a corporal or sergeant in the 115th AAA Gun Battalion. These were the ones who shoot down the high-flying planes. When we landed on the beaches of Normandy, I went through the Normandy beaches. I went through the Siegfried Line. I went through the Maginot Line. I was there for the final Battle of the Bulge. When the war was over, I was given an honorable discharge as a sergeant of infantry and awarded 5 battle stars for not having been killed in any of the major battles in World War II. So I'm a survivor. I've been there. I've seen what happens. I've seen the horrors, because my final assignments were to go into the concentration camps as they were being liberated. The American government, the British government, had decided to notify the Germans in advance that they would be held to account in a court of law for the crimes they were committing, known very well throughout the world by that time, Kristallnacht, when they burned all the synagogues in Germany. And so I was pulled out of the artillery and ordered to set up a war crimes branch in General Patton's army. I'm sure I was the first soldier in the American army to deal with war crimes. In that capacity, my job was to get into the concentration camps as quickly as we could, right on the heels of a tank battalion, immediately try to collect evidence to prove the crimes. The scenes were quite horrible. I mention it only because you're not going to experience anything like that from the current crisis. Dead bodies lying all over the ground, crematoria going. Dead bodies look like piles of bones piled up next to the crematorium, waiting to be burned. SS running from the camp. Some of the inmates running after the SS. 1 or 2 incidents which I witnessed where they caught one of them. The inmates themselves caught one, strapped him to the gurney, put him in the crematorium, first beat him up a bit, then put him in, and then heated him up a bit, then took him out again, and beat him again, and put him in again, until he was cooked, burned alive. I have seen that. We're trying to create a more humane and peaceful world. That's what I've been trying to do. And it's been sort of a trauma with me. And as I speak to you, I have just started my 100th year. I'm 100 years old. How do you do?
Congratulations. Wonderful.
I have spent all of those years, since those years of horror, trying to create a more humane and peaceful world. And I am grateful to each one of you, because I need your help and you need your help. I'm not worried about myself. I'm living on borrowed time. But I'm aware of the fact that we now have the capacity to destroy all life on this planet from cyberspace. We have the capacity, and the Russians have the same capacity, and the Chinese have the same. I don't know which other countries may have. The nuclear weapons have become obsolete. We don't know what to do with the waste. We spend millions of dollars just preserving the things, waiting to see where we can use them. And so you live on a powder keg. The new generation, I'm now talking to young people like you. If you don't settle your disputes by peaceful means, and you start to use armed force, one step leads to the next one. the final step is a cyberspace attack. And that'll be the end of life on this planet. They have that capacity, and they're spending billions of dollars to preserve that and improve that capacity. And by they, I mean the United States, I mean Russia, I mean China, and I don't know who else is involved. And that's a little frightening. I was never frightened in all the years I was in World War II and all the battles I was in World War II. But I am concerned now about persuading people to something which seems to me to be so obvious. Use law instead of war. I can't predict that we're all going to agree on everything, but if you don't agree, instead of doing what we do now, we send young people like you out to kill other young people like you whom they don't even know, who never did them any harm, who live in a country we probably never heard of, and tell them to kill each other until they get too tired of killing each other. Then they rest, then they start again. That's the current system. That's crazy. It's absolutely crazy. Instead of spending the money which is spent to improve armaments, billions of dollars, they should use that money to take care of the legitimate complaints of people who are starving, or people trying to feed their children, or people trying to get an education. Spend the money to help the people. Instead, we're spending more money to kill more people. Well, how stupid can you get? And that, in fact, is the state of the world today, which you are now entering. And it's up to you what you do about it. It means you say, as we did in connection with the Vietnam War, hell no, we won't go. You go. Anybody who favors killing innocent people in order to protect their own national interests, or their personal interests, it's a criminal behavior. And all of my life, I worked to create a permanent international criminal court. Mm-hmm. When they had their first trial in the Nuremberg courthouse, the same courtroom that Hermann Goering and all the other big Nazis were tried, I was 27 years old. I remember my opening statement very well. I said it's with sorrow and with hope that we will here disclose the mass murder of millions of innocent people. The sorrow was based upon my grief for the people who had been killed or who had lost their family members. My hope was that we would create a more humane world. Well, we have not succeeded in that hope. We did set up a United Nations with a charter, which had a lot of big loopholes in it, and which depended upon the Security Council to be the enforcement arm. Well, I'm ashamed to say, I'm sorry to say, they have betrayed their trust. They were entrusted to have the disarmament programs, which would have been prerequisite, and to provide the military force to carry out the goals of decent behavior. Instead, they voted their own national interests, and the result was they become ineffective. So we have a damaged structure. In order to have a peaceful society, and I've written lots of books on it, stuff like that, you need certain components. You need, first of all, laws to define what's permissible and what's not permissible. You need courts in order to determine whether the laws have been violated. And then you need a system of effective enforcement. Well, we are beginning to have the laws. We have Universal Declaration of Human Rights. We have international courts coming along quite well, despite all the difficulties. But we have done practically nothing on the enforcement arm. So you're sitting on a two-legged stool. Mm-hmm. And it's a very dangerous stool. You'll end up sitting on your head. So we still have things to develop, but it takes time because we have glorified war for centuries. And it's madness today. It's different. If it was little David hitting Goliath in the head with a rock, okay, we can get along with that. But you can't get along with having a nuclear weapon blow up your country. That's the beginning of the end. Maybe that's the way this planet will go. There are billions of planets in the cyberspace, in the universal space. Why should we be different? Depends on you. We're supposed to be a rational animal. Animal we are, but animals don't kill each other except for food. If we would insist that everybody who killed somebody should have to eat them, maybe we would get a change. But that's the world in which you live. And I can give you, the wisdom of 100 years of dedicated life trying to create a more humane world. I was raised in poverty. I was born in a house which there was no electricity, no running water, no toilet. Toilet was out in the backyard. I lived in poverty throughout my life. I was welcomed by the Statue of Liberty. Send us, you're homeless, you're tired. And since that time, by virtue of my good fortune in the stock market primarily, I was able to collect millions of dollars, which I have given to the Holocaust Museum and to other charities working for world peace. So I've seen the progress. It's slow in coming. My end will one day be coming along too. I can't go on this way. I have no time to get sick. I have no time to die.
That is correct. That is right, Mr. Ferencz.
Young people like you, you have a great future ahead of you. Be bold. If you know that something is wrong, oppose it. If you know that something is right, encourage it. Use your own judgment. You don't need more than common sense to know that what we do now is crazy. It's plain crazy. You arm, you bleed the people, all right, and then you try to kill as many as you can. That's crazy too. If you agree that it's crazy, kids, I tell you my final words and all such.
Now, Mr. Ferencz, would you be open to taking some questions from some students?
We'll take all your questions you like.
All right. I think Mira has a question for you.
Okay. Who has it? Mira?
Mira, yep.
Mira, I don't see you in the mirror.
Hi, my name is Mira. It's so nice to meet you. So my question is, after witnessing the atrocities of the war, like you mentioned going to the camps as they were being liberated, how did it feel when you walked into the courtroom and you faced the Nazis responsible?
You asked me how did I feel when I walked into the courtroom and when I visited the camps?
Yeah.
And saw the Nazis and looked at those very people who committed atrocities.
That's a very good question, because I came to the conclusion, I knew my defendants. I use as an example, a typical one really. A man, I selected defendants based upon their high rank and their education. SS General Otto Oldorf, Dr. Otto Oldorf, father of 5 children, head of the unit which killed, according to his reports, 90,000 Jews. When asked whether it was correct figure, he said no, he couldn't be sure of that because the men used to brag about the body count. But he didn't like his men taking infants and smashing their heads against the tree. He told them they should aim for the mother when she's hugging the baby, and he'll kill both of them with one shot. He was a doctor. Had a degree in doctorate. He was I don't remember what his profession was after that, but he was typical of most of the people. Nice looking. He made an argument, which I heard very recently. He argued that what they did was self-defense, because he said Hitler told them that the Russians were planning to attack Germany. Therefore, it was necessary for them to preempt that and an anticipatory breach and justify attacking German Russia first. The 3 American judges in the trial said that's not a legal argument. It's not a correct statement of the law, and it's a very dangerous thing to do. You can go in because you think your neighbor is going to attack you. You can kill him and his wife and his children and everybody else in the neighborhood. And so they sentenced him to death by hanging. And he had not changed his view, even where I was sure he was going to die. And I talked to him man to man. I said, is there anything I can do for you? I was hoping he would say that tell my wife and children I love them and be sorry. No regret. Why no regret? He said it was a good defense, self-defense is what we were trying to do. The next time I heard that argument was from our president, my president and yours, Donald Trump, in his first address to the United Nations, said, and I heard this on TV and I couldn't believe my ears, he said, I'm talking to the head of North Korea. If you threaten us or any of our allies, we will totally destroy you. And I thought, my God, that's what's Ollendorf's argument. He felt threatened, so they totally destroyed them. I said, I was talking to myself, Mr. President, please, I sentenced a man to death for that. And you were thinking that to be the policy of the United States? And I was ashamed, and I didn't regret what I had done, because I think what I had done was the right thing to do. He had no remorse at any time. So what conclusion did it lead me to? The people I was talking about, my mass murderers, they were mass murderers. And, you know, there's nobody, no exception. I had all their daily reports from the front. There was no question of their guilt, no doubt. They felt that they were patriots, carrying out their country's necessity, proof. And they didn't have any sense of guilt or remorse. They never said, I'm sorry, even after they've been sentenced to death, because they felt what they were doing was the interest of their country. What they failed to recognize was that we are all inhabitants of one small planet. And you must treat the inhabitants of that planet as though they were members of your own family. And everyone, every human being, male, female, black, white, or any faith or no faith, are entitled to live in peace and human dignity, regardless of their race or their creed. And that was the point I made to the court. I said, I want a rule of law. I cannot give you a rule of law that will balance the scales of justice. You killed 1 million people, hundreds of thousands of children shot one shot at a time. There's no sense of justice. I can't, with 22 defendants, call that balanced. But if I can get a rule of law which will protect everyone from that type of behavior, that would be something worthwhile. And that's what I asked the court. And in my closing of that case, I remember I was 27 years old. I said, these men were the perpetrators of the darkest crimes in history. Murder was their tool, life was their toy. If these men be immune, then law has lost its meaning and man must live in fear. Well, law hasn't quite lost its meaning, but I had a chance to repeat that when the new International Criminal Court, for which I worked harder than any other human being alive, dead or alive, was created. They invited me to come and make the closing remarks for the prosecution in a case against an African who had been using children as soldiers. And I repeated the argument that I had made. The plea I make is a plea of humanity to law. And I asked them to affirm the principle of law in the hope that that would be a general protection for everybody. And they did. I was then 92 years old. So it took a little while, kids. And I don't think I'm going to go another 90 years.
Just a kid. You were just a kid.
But remember one thing, never give up, never give up, never give up. We are making progress. Oh, it takes a few more years. And the ball is now up to you.
All right. So Maya, Ella, where are you? Maya, do you have a question?
I am here.
Okay, there you are.
I want to thank you again for coming to talk to us. And I also had a question about the movie Prosecuting Evil. You mentioned that you got the Peace Prize directly after Nelson Mandela. So I was wondering how you feel like your actions reflected Nelson Mandela's and how you feel that your legacies will live in unison.
Now, I'm not sure I understood your question really, partly because my hearing is bad.
She was asking about sort of, the Peace Prize that you, after Nelson Mandela, and that your actions, how you in some ways were similar, in some ways similar to what Nelson Mandela might have done, or do your legacies live on? Like, how do you see your legacies carrying on?
Well, there are many people like Nelson Mandela, whom I much admired, and the Harvard Law School gave me their highest award. And what I appreciated was the previous recipient of that award 9 years before was Nelson Mandela, who had spent 20 years in solitary confinement to establish the principle that a black man could be as good as a white man. So I was a strong admirer of Nelson Mandela. And there have been others, of course, who felt the same way, but it takes more time and more people before we can have the principle accepted universally as it should be.
Mm-hmm. So, Shuli, did you have a question? Shuli Franco?
Yes. Hello. Thank you so much for your time. In your movie Prosecuting Evil, you explain that you chose not to prosecute the simple military men.
Yeah.
Do you believe that they or any bystander is guilty for what happened? And do you believe that bystanders are guilty of modern atrocities?
That's also a tough question because I don't know of modern atrocities which are really be comparable. But surely we couldn't put the whole country on trial, and not everybody in the country was approving of the murders that took place. A majority of the country had voted for Adolf Hitler. His policy was clear. We are a superior race. Deutschland über alles, Germany over everything. That was the cry. Most of the people accepted it, and they got the consequence of that. Now, what else did you want to know about that? You had another part to your question.
Do you believe that the simple military men were guilty?
Yeah, now, okay, let me answer that. I selected my defendants on the basis of their, let me say I had two qualifications. First of all, the courtroom only had 22 seats. That's the trial against Goering and company. And the feeling was, well, we had 3,000 members of this Einsatz group, and each one of them was a mass murderer or an accomplice to mass murderer. I had to select 22. Who do you pick? There was no enlisted man in my dock, none. I picked only those big. First were generals. I wanted the generals next. Then I want people who are well educated. One of the most educated was Dr. Rush, had a double doctor degree. I had never heard that before. He murdered 33,771 Jews in Babi Yar in Ukraine in 1941. 33,000 Jews. Dr. Rush, he was sentenced to death. So today's war deals in volumes like that. If one man kills one man, he's sentenced to death for murder. Why not a man who killed thousands of people? What we have to do is to re-educate them to think in moral terms and think of themselves as being among the victims. There is no punishment adequate to the crimes, which I have personally witnessed. You have to change the hearts and minds that people have got to say, no, we have to compromise. We have to be compassionate of other points of view. It's no shame to try to compromise with your adversary. You must have the courage not to be discouraged. And these are difficult things, but it can be done. If there's a will, there's a way. People like you who have to do it. Thank you for your help.
Gabriella?
Yes, hi. Thank you so much for speaking to us, first of all.
You're welcome.
I was just wondering what you thought is the most effective way to respond to Holocaust deniers. And I was also wondering if you could talk a little bit about how you think we can stop the rise of anti-Semitism in America today.
Both good questions. First of all, how I deal with Holocaust deniers. No, I've never met a Holocaust denier because I would spit in his face and let him have the friends across to punch him in the nose. And that's ridiculous to be a Holocaust denier in the face of the overwhelming record that we have in the Holocaust Museum in Washington, for example, and other museums in the world. This is a man who is either blind or beastly or whatever. I not do that. How can you stop anti-Semitism in the world? There are all kinds of Semitisms, and we can't stop it completely, to be honest with you, because there will always be people who think they are better than the other, and they hate the other and want to eliminate the other. And they have not yet learned to be tolerant, completely tolerant of these differences. We have lived through rotating cases of anti-Semitism going up and going down and going up and going down, and the same way with the rights of the blacks or the rights of the homosexuals or the rights of anybody else. They can never get everybody to agree, but you have to be tolerant of a different point of view as well, providing they don't want to kill you with it. So it'll take more education, more patience, more publicity, more law as well. Inciting to riot is a crime, should be a crime. A hate crime is a crime. You can use the law as an instrumentality and just insist upon it and hope that you're not, that you get enough control of the majority so that people will be afraid to do that.
Good advice. Eliana Zaghi?
Hi. Thank you so much for talking with
Welcome.
us.
You're breaking up a little bit, Eliana.
Was there anyone else? Sorry. Was there anyone else you wish had been prosecuted at Nuremberg?
I didn't hear your question.
You want to know, is there anyone else that you wish had been prosecuted at Nuremberg?
I told you I had a choice of 3,000 mass murderers, and I could select 22. So is there anybody else? I would hope that the law reach out to hold accountable anybody who commits crimes against humanity. But we need a lot more prisons and a lot more courts. All we can do is establish the principles and let it be as abhorrent to the public mind as, for example, rape is abhorrent. It should be abhorrent. War is the same. There's never been a war without rape of the women. I've seen it in action in Berlin when the Russians got there. So we have to just have an education to the public. Some things you just don't do. You don't just kill people because they have a different point of view.
Neve.
Hello, Mr. Ferencz. Thank you for your time. My question is, what do you think was a more important role for Nuremberg? Actually punishing Nazi criminals for their role in the atrocities, or setting a precedent for prosecuting crimes against humanities?
Certainly, it's the latter. The important precedent of trying to prevent crimes against humanity is much more important than the trial of 22 mass murderers. This is only an illustration of the type of things which you cannot tolerate. And so we have to have a general acceptance of the rule of law. That's our best hope, because you have either violence or you have non-violent settlements. And I'm against violent settlements if we can do it the other way around. So it's far more important to have the world recognize there are certain kinds of behavior which are not tolerable under any circumstances. And we are all members of one human family, and you must accept it as such and deal with it as such.
Paula, I'm going to skip to Paula Unger.
Hi, thank you so much. So my question is, did your Judaism impact your decision to be a prosecutor at Nuremberg, and did it affect how you handled the trial, and how?
I can't really answer that question because I don't know the answer. I was raised in the Jewish tradition, and I must confess that I was a skeptic at various times in my life. While I was in the concentration camp seeing what had gone on, I asked God, well, where were you when all this was happening, and where are you? And I'm still waiting for an answer. And the answer I came to is, don't wait for God, do it yourself. If you want to see a change, your religion, whatever it is, Judaism or any other, should recognize the need to treat all human beings as human beings and not to behave in an inhumane way. Religion has a very important role to play in maintaining an orderly society and lending solace to people who are in grief. And I don't want to belittle that at all, but religion, in my mind, comes from within. And it's fundamentally just treating other human beings as you would like to be treated. And that's an old principle of Judaism as well as other religions as well.
Okay, thank you. Malka Drang, you have a question about the ICC, I think.
Yes, hi. Thank you for your time. I was wondering what the ICC would look like to you ideally, and how would we decide who would lead the ICC and who would be prosecuting who?
Well, we have a statute for the ICC. We worked a long time at that. Um, the, the document which defines who is to be tried and so on, the statutes for the International Criminal Court, was negotiated with all the countries that are interested in this subject in Rome. I had the opening address there. I've never had any official position. Nobody hired me and nobody can fire me, and no one can buy me here. And I said, I have come to Rome to speak for those who cannot speak, the victims. And I have always tried to speak for the victims. And eventually, as we develop the court judicial systems, the courts and judges and prosecutors will be able to be a voice for the victims. It's really a fundamental question of you're ready to accept the rule of law or not. If you're not ready to accept the rule of law, your only alternative is violence. And violence is getting too violent. Not for me, because I've had it, but for you and for all the other nice, lovely young people like you.
Maya, did you have a follow-up question on that, Maya?
Yeah, what did you think when the Bush administration said that we wouldn't be bound by the ICC, and how did it make you feel?
If I understood your question, how do I feel when the Bush administration or other administrations oppose the ICC? I feel they're very short-sighted, very dangerous, very, very dangerous, because the next war is going to make the last ones look like child's play. And that scares me, not for myself, but for you. And the people who are not prepared to accept a rule of law with all of the problems that go with it. I don't want to underestimate the problems faced by the ICC today. I know the chief prosecutor, I've known the other prosecutors, they're all very dedicated people, but there are great difficulties because the criminals they are trying to arrest and try are protected by their governments. They're usually very high themselves in the governments. They don't let investigators come in. You have to know the local language. You have to be able to interrogate witnesses. They have to be willing to testify. All these are very difficult problems. And Fatou Bensouda, who is the chief prosecutor now, has her hands full at all times trying to be able to put on a case. So the people who are opposed to the rule of ICC are short-sighted. They don't realize that their alternative is they getting killed, which is going to happen in the next time. If there is no rule of law, what have you got? You've got the law of the jungle. You've got back to Wild West. Do you want that? I hope the answer will be no.
Matan, you had one more question on the ICC, I think.
Yeah. Okay, so do you believe there is any legitimacy in the arguments the U.S. makes in not being bound by the International Criminal Court? If so, what are they? And if not, why not?
Can you translate? I didn't hear you very well. Can you restate his question for him? I didn't hear him.
Sure. He was asking about the International Criminal Court.
Yes.
And he wanted to know about the legitimacy, if you think there's any legitimacy to the arguments that the United States makes in not being bound by the ICC, and if it's legitimate, why, and if not, why not?
It's not a question of legitimate or illegitimate. It's a question of being incredibly stupid. Either you say, I'm against the rule of law because I want to have no rule of law. What are you talking about? You have a court. They have problems. They have serious problems. They have problems of staffing. They have problems of principle. They have problems of formulation of the law. They have problems of having it accepted universally. But if you don't go the route of lawmaking, what have you got left? You've got Wild West. Wild West, everybody interprets the law as they see fit. They kill their neighbors as they see fit, with an increasing capacity to kill more people, more in the shortest period of time. What kind of a world are you heading for? You're heading for hell. I'd rather not be part of that.
Fair enough, fair enough. So I think Shuli has a question about justice.
What does justice mean to you? And can human beings ever truly serve justice?
It's impossible to speak of justice in the type of trial that I was engaged in. Because there we had people who were educated, I'm talking the perpetrators of the crimes, educated, high-ranking, comfortable people who shot children one shot at a time, or they smashed their heads against a tree to save ammunition. And there were 3,000 men who did that for 2 years. And they had murdered over 1 million people that way. And I had all their official secret reports defining exactly how many people were shot, which town, on whose commands, and so on. And I asked myself, where is justice? There is no justice here. In the scales of justice, 1 million innocent people killed. And I take only 22 defendants of 3,000 who are engaged in that every day. If you cannot have a rule of justice on us when the crimes of that magnitude, and warfare is that type of magnitude, what else do you have? We don't have any instrumentalities other than our own hearts and minds. People have to recognize that the day of glorifying a war is over. You have to glorify today your kindness to your neighbor and not your capacity to kill him and him kill you and your children as well. So we have to change our way of thinking about the use of armed force. It is no longer tolerable in the modern world because it'll eliminate the world. And what else have you got left? You have settling your disputes in a peaceful way through an independent, impartial group of judges.
Thank you.
Good luck.
Donnie Schwartz.
Hi, thank you so much for giving us the time and speaking to us. My question is that the crime against humanity came into existence. Can you give us a working definition for today?
I didn't quite, you asked me something about the crime against humanity, but what do you want to know about it? Whether it applies to that?
Yeah, could you have a working definition, something that we can sort of keep in mind today, and what do you consider a crime against humanity?
Sure. A crime against humanity is the illegal use of armed force, which will kill large numbers of innocent people or cause great harm and suffering. For example, seizing your infant child away from the mother who hasn't got proper immigration papers to enter the United States, just grabbing the child away. I consider that a crime against humanity because it causes great pain and suffering to the mother. And for what? Because she didn't have the right papers.
You should refer them to the ICC online. The website of the ICC is where you go to see the statute.
I'm getting my son to coach me here, but I can't understand what he's saying.
You should refer them to the
ICC statute
website.
Deals with crimes against humanity. There is a provision of definition of crimes against humanity. You can have murder can be a crime against humanity, but I was referring to the final catch clause of that definition, which says other inhumane acts designed to cause great human suffering. And it's that broad definition, taking a mother's infant child away from her because she didn't have the right papers and saying, don't worry, he'll be taken care of. You throw the kid into an institution somewhere. That's a crime against humanity. It's a shame that our government would be making such a policy. It's so obviously something they shouldn't do. But it takes a change in the thinking before we get there.
Okay. I have a question as a parent. How did you think it affected you and how you raised your kids? How did everything you went through and saw in your life, how does that affect how you sort of interacted with your kids and what you taught them about the world? How do you get them to engage with the world and yet know that these horrible, people are out there and there are horrible things happening? I'm just curious.
Yes, my son is here. I'm going to call him over here. My son has now become my assistant because in my old age, I'm trying to pass some of the burdens on to him. My children, I had 4 children. They are all socially minded. They're all well educated. They are familiar with the work I do. My son now devotes all of his time helping me do what I'm trying to do. And I'll ask him to come up here and say hello to you. And the answer to your question, did he get educated at home? I tried to get them educated along similar ideas.
I just came from the gym, so you'll have to forgive me. But you know, I mentioned on the film Prosecuting Evil that my dad would literally go around the table at night asking, "What have you done for mankind today?" But that's really only part of the equation. You know, my parents both raised their children with the maxim, "Don't leave a place the way you found it. Leave it the way you would like to have found it." And that applies to planet Earth as well. And I think that says it all.
Amen. Amen. Do you are you okay with some more questions, or how are you feeling? I don't want to take too much of your time, sir.
You want to do a few more questions, Deb?
If it's up to you, I'm sitting here.
Okay, so maybe we'll open it up to some of the alum or the adults if you have questions. Becca, I see you. I know you've been having your hand raised for a while.
Hi, thanks for being with us. I appreciate your time. I'm personally struggling with your recommendation to oppose injustice because I've found that that kind of anger often fuels more divisiveness.
That's a good point. I'm against vengeance. I've seen how vengeance works in action. People forget everything else. I gave you the illustration where I saw the inmates cook, literally burn alive, one of the camp guards who had been persecuting them in the past. And exactly how you avoid the feeling of vengeance when you're trying to do justice. I was always thinking about the future. When I was a liberator of the camps, I never made a distinction based upon the religion of any of the prisoners. I felt they all had been subjected to horrible conditions. They would come out understanding how horrible it is to accept that kind of a world. And all I can do is appeal to the reason of human beings. How would you feel in those shoes, those conditions? We develop rules for humanity, kindness, not causing additional suffering, and making it illegal to torture, make it illegal for certain other things. But in the last analysis, it's a question of the hearts and minds that each one of you has to think about it and say, my goodness, I wouldn't like that to happen to me, and I won't do that to anybody else.
Mm-hmm.
And hope that'll lead you to where you want to go.
Lori.
Hello again. I want to thank you for sharing your thoughts and wisdom with us. I wanted to pick your brain some more about the process of creating a universal law that you talked about for your steps for a peaceful society. How do you create a universal law on planet Earth with all of its thousands, if not millions of cultures that all have a different definition of what it means to be good?
I tell you in one word, how you do that? Slowly. Now, I don't mean really to be joking about a serious question. We can't do this overnight, kids. It's going to take you a long time. I've been working at it now. I'm 100 years old. I've been working on it for 90 years. It'll take time, but never give up. That's the answer. Keep going. You're going to have errors. You're going to have mistakes. You're going to do horrid things. You're going to have to fight for it, all kinds of things. But if you know what your goal is, a more humane world where everyone is entitled to certain basic human rights, enable them to live in peace and dignity. That's your goal. It's not easy and it's not quick. And so when I said slowly is how you do it, I wasn't really being facetious. I know how difficult it is. I see how much, but we have come a long way in my lifetime. We do have courts functioning. They're being belabored left and right, people trying to kill them all the time. We have laws, we have principles, we have ethics being taught. The Harvard Divinity School, which is ecumenical, is a big supporter of the work that I've been doing to change the way people's minds work, to think about good and evil and the relationship with other human beings. Now with new technology, it's even more important than ever, but now it's more possible than ever as well. So I'm optimistic in the long run. Either you'll kill everybody on this planet or you'll shape up and do some more decent things. Good luck.
Ms. Shulam.
Okay, so my question is, how do you think about the use of force? I mean, which is basically war in a place where you know it's required for survival. And I think of this basically in the context of Israel
If it's
and
required for
its
why?
wars.
Wait a minute, I didn't hear you. If it's required for what?
If violence is required for survival, how do you think about the use of it? And I use the example of Israel.
Well,
using the example of Israel.
Yes, I understand your problem. Violence breeds more violence, and it's not an answer to any problem. And you may be seeing it in Israel too. You go engage in violence, and next war you have another war, and then you have another war, then you have another war. It solves nothing. It kills more people. You have to rely on reason and on compassion and on understanding and a willingness to recognize that force is not going to change it. But when you kill somebody who's your enemy, his family will want to kill your enemy and your family as well. And that you've seen that happen. You have to forego the use of violence at a time when violence is so destructive. It was different when little Samson hit, Goliath in the head with a rock, but that's not the case now. Now you're killing lots of innocent people. Nice people like you, they don't want to kill, but you can't avoid it. So you have to change your way of dealing with violence. And you have to deal with violence by nonviolent means only. It sounds like a contradiction, but that's the only answer to your question.
Okay. Hepzibah. Oh, this is Hepzibah. She is with Facing History. She's a program associate with Facing History, and she's calling in from Israel.
Yeah. Thank you so much. It's amazing to be on a Zoom call with you. I'm still kind of reeling from it, and this is a difficult question because by that count, if you're saying that violence is always not the answer, then what about America's role in World War II? How do you feel about that? For instance, muddy the waters of America's role in World War II, like Dresden or other stories. And I struggle with it because I struggle with it. So I was wondering what you think.
I don't think I understood the question.
She's asking really, what about the necessary violence, for example, of the U.S.'s role in World War II, and about the unnecessary violence, like the bombing of Dresden?
When the violence is necessary, and if it's left to the decision of the people concerned, you're going to have more violence. You have to have a third party intervene who is objective and who can be trusted by both sides. That's very hard to come by because each side feels very strongly that their position is the correct one and they're ready to kill and die for it. And that's religion. Their religion is primarily the cause of that, or their nationalistic feeling, or their economic circumstances. So it's a very hard thing to do. You've seen, I spent a few years of my life in Israel. I had set up offices in Tel Aviv, Haifa, and Jerusalem in order to help Nazi victims with their claims for compensation from Germany. So I saw the condition of the victims who had been come out of the camps, as well as others. And you've touched on a fundamental and very difficult problem. And my answer to it is you have to forego violence under all circumstances. You have to have honest judges. It's hard to come by as well. And even a bad decision is better than going to war, no matter what. And you have to run the risk that you will not agree with what the judge says. If you don't agree and you want to go out and kill your neighbors, you'll end up killing everybody again. That will not be better. So it's a choice of evils. Hopefully everybody will have sufficient ethics education that they will recognize killing a person because you don't agree with his religion is not a reasonable ground for killing him, or because you don't agree with his color, or you don't agree with his political view. These are no reasons for going around killing people. And if you insist upon killing them, I don't know how to stop them short of violence, but it's unfortunate. So we should encourage every other means, as the UN Charter tried to do. Other means, they listed about 15 different means of settling disputes without the use of force. So the use of force should remain unlawful unless it's done by a centralized authority against criminals, but otherwise not. That's it. Hope for the best.
Sir, if there was a single book that you could require that every person in the world read to get some perspective or an understanding, is there something that you would recommend or?
Yes, I would recommend something. You don't have to carry any heavy books. My website is ferencz.org. I've written a dozen books on all of these problems, on setting up a court, upon human rights, on condition of displaced persons, on everything you need to know. That's the easiest and cheapest way because it's all free. And you can, if you got any better solutions of it, please write to me. I'll come back from the grave. Try to help.
One lesson. Oh, Shira.
Okay. First of all, this was incredible, and thank you. And also, your class is incredible. These students are so insightful and have the most amazing questions. So thank you, Norma. Mr. Ferencz, I wanted to ask you, maybe this could be sort of a culminating question because you've been on for quite some time and I'm sure you're exhausted.
I'm not exhausted, but go ahead.
on that theme of exhaustion though, I'm thinking by my math, you started this work when you were 27. You just told us you're 100 years old. That's 73 years of your complete dedication to making this a just and humane world, and the work is not over. Can you leave us today with some ideas, some wisdom on what you held on to keep going? There's so many things we start and we stop because we don't see the result right away. So how do you keep doing this work?
You have to be patient. You have to recognize that it's not something which can be solved in one human lifetime. I have recognized that. That's why I'm talking to young people. It takes more time to change the hearts and minds of people who have been trained to kill and die for their religion, their nationalism, or any other things they're trying to protect, their fortune or whatever it may be. That has to be turned around. Instead of glorified, it should be treated with contempt and treated as a crime. It takes a change of mind, and you got to think about it, talk about it, see what your alternatives really are. And I think if you do that, and if you remain a rational person, you will see that peace is always better than war. And if peace is water, you must have a peaceful means of settling your differences.
Amen. Thank you so much, Mr. Ferencz, Dr. Ferencz.
Hooray, hooray for Ferencz.
Wow. Thank you so much for your time, for your wisdom, for everything.
You're very welcome. There's going to be a price to pay. You send me a copy of this interview, and we'll send that around to as many other people as we can.
I will do so. We will definitely send it to you, sir.
Okay, look forward to it. Shalom.
Shalom.
Goodbye. Auf Wiedersehen.
Thank you. Auf Wiedersehen.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.